recording.
Oh.
Hi there, I'm Karen Marie, and this is Psyched Up for Sunday, June 28, 2020. And today I have a guest with me, Paige Freeman. So Paige is a healer. And Paige, why don't you tell everybody how we got to know each other and a little bit about yourself and your work. I will throw out your website first off, which is healingfriend.net.
Yep.
Is your website that people can go to look more about you, and we'll mention that again. But all right, how do we meet, Paige?
Oh, a few years ago, I didn't realize it, but my psychic abilities were opening up. And I felt like I was going crazy because I was channeling somebody very specifically, and I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't know where to go. I felt like I was going nuts. And I found myself in Austin working on a music video with a friend. And I was running an errand and I had some time to kill. And I was like, well, I'm just going to walk around. Should I go left or right? Left or right? And I heard go left. And I went left. And the week leading up to this moment, the word marigold had come up a lot. The color, the word, the flower, like marigold was just everywhere. And I remember thinking, like, I have heard the word marigold more times this week than I've ever heard in my life. And so fast forward, I'm in Austin. I decide to go left. I'm walking down the street and there's a store called Marigold. And it's all sort of Indian things and henna and saris and things. And I'm very connected to Indian culture. And so I was like, okay, like I've been led here. And it was like 12:45 or something. And they started to put out this sign, Psychic Readings with Karen Marie at 1 p.m. And I had somewhere to be, but I was like, is she good? And they're like, yeah, she's great. And she teaches psychic development classes. I was like, okay, give her my number, have her call me, and we'll figure it out. And so Karen called me a few hours later and we talked just to see if there was a vibe.
Yeah, just to clarify, I had put my sign down early that day and had left. So she saw her putting back my sign away because I wasn't in there. So yeah.
Yeah, like just totally like random times, like it was all too perfect. And so later I was like, you know what, I feel good about this. Yeah, let's do a phone reading. And I didn't tell her anything about what I was experiencing or anything like that. And the first thing she said was, do you have an ex who's died?
You're talking about me, the first thing I said?
And that's who I was channeling. And he's not dead, but for all intents and purposes, it definitely feels that way. And so then we went deeper into it, and I always record when I have a psychic reading because sometimes certain words make all the difference and they don't sound important in the moment, but in hindsight, they can make all the difference.
Well, and there's often multi-layers in readings so that you may be ready to receive or hear something at one point, and then when you hear it back later, you hear something you didn't even hear the first time too. Absolutely. So that can happen as well. Yeah, I recommend people recording my readings as well.
Yeah. And I've gone back so many times to all the readings that we had together. And that was the beginning of my journey. And I had no idea this is where it was leading. But yeah, so that's when I first met Karen, and I was convinced. I was like, okay, she is amazing. And she has called things, she's called timing, she's called, she's described people perfectly who have come into my life. It was pretty remarkable. And I'm really lucky to have found you when I did.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you become a healer? So you were in town filming a video because you are an actor, correct?
Yeah. So I'm a healer. It's kind of a long, convoluted story. I've always been an empath.
And how old are you, by the way?
I'm 28 years old.
Okay.
I've always been an empath, and I didn't know that until my mid-20s. And it was really hard for me to assimilate into the social structures growing up. I always had different friends, and I just didn't really vibe with the way things were ever. And then I went to college. I went to art school, theater school, and freshman year was great because it was a whole different thing, and it was artsy, and it was connected, and it was deep, and it was gritty, and I felt this sort of aliveness that I never got to experience in my hometown come through. But then another structure became very clear to me that was also very oppressive. And so I've always just sort of been a weirdo, not playing into the structures that want me to play into them. And it's been really frustrating and really isolating and really, really painful my whole life. And
I think a lot of light workers and healers can relate to your story. I know I can. I felt the same way until I found Buddhism and started finding my tribe. So yeah.
It's really, it's painful, and it's not easy, but something really beautiful that the school did give me, the education, the actual awareness education and work was phenomenal, because they would say things like, we'd be doing a monologue in front of the class and there'd be like tension in our fists or like tension in our shoulders. And our teachers would be like, hey, drop that. And then you'd
like,
start stopping.
As you're talking about it.
Right? So then somebody would like drop that tension, start sobbing, and they'd be like, start the monologue. And it would always be beautiful. And so they were like, your trauma lives in your body. Every experience you've ever had lives in your body. You know, you are everything that ever was, ever has been, and ever will be. It's all in there. And so I developed, because I was also coming back from some chronic narcissistic abuse, as well as some sexual abuse that I wasn't ready to fully see for what it was. I wasn't self-aware enough yet to understand what these paradigms.
And just to stop and pause, narcissistic abuse is a thing. And it's the other side of the narcissist is the codependent, and it's an incredibly wounding relationship for sure.
It is. And mine was very early, and it ended up setting the tone for what has become the rest of my life so far. So it was my greatest curse, and now it's my greatest blessing. As you say, poison to medicine.
Yes.
So I became very aware of the mind-body-spirit connection while I was at school. And I really threw myself into that. And I used the training more than I probably should have, kind of like therapy. And really
hey, when you find something that resonates, right? You keep doing it. Something's working for you. You keep doing it.
I got my money's worth, that's for sure. And so then I moved to Los Angeles, and I lived alone. And I really just sort of shut myself off from everything and started to ask myself questions. What I started to do was retrain my brain, because there were a lot of negative thoughts in my brain. So I retrained my brain to a point where my synapses were firing positive messages, but there was like a glass ceiling there. And
so how did you retrain your brain? Like, tell me what you did to do that, because that can be, people can start like, check, what? How do you retrain your brain?
So your brain has synapses in it. And the more of one thought that you have, the stronger those synapses become. So if you have a lot of negative thoughts, you're more prone to have negative thoughts, because that's where the energy goes habitually. So to retrain your brain, you have to catch yourself in the midst of your thoughts, walk it back, and change it. And people do this with affirmations. Lots of like certain like ancient solfeggios can help, and tones can do different healing things for the
because
brain.
In my experience, like, we don't realize how many things we're generating within that are mucking up things from our belief systems we're holding, their inner self-talk, emotional things we're holding, like things we say out loud that are negative. Like, a lot of people are unaware of how we're creating whatever it is that we're saying inside our head, our beliefs we're holding. And so people are like trying to manifest their relationship, and they're always saying, I'm always alone. I never can find anybody. And then they're like, well, why? You've been telling me someone's coming. Why isn't anybody here? Like,
switch that. And so there are lots of different ways to do it. But that only got me so far. And so a friend of mine from college who experienced a whole lot more and different trauma than I did in this lifetime, I ran into her or met up with her in Los Angeles. And she was like, I've been working with this healer over the phone. And I love the woo-woo stuff. I always have. I had a ghost encounter when I was 6, and ever since I've been really interested. I've always been drawn to crystals, but like,
so could you see auras as a child? What did you notice as a child about psychic abilities? Because I believe everyone is psychic. That's the whole thing behind Psyched Up, is that we're all psychic, we're all intuitive. And for some of us, the volume is just turned up really loud, and other people's volume is turned down or off, and that it shows up in a myriad of ways, whether it's visual or auditory. Like, there's all these just like everybody has gifts and talents that are all different. So our psychic abilities show up in a variety of ways as well. So what did you notice as a child?
I always knew exactly what was going on.
Okay.
Like people would walk into the room and I'd be like, that person hates that person slept with that person wants to sleep with that person, but hates the person that they're with. And then like, I just knew. But something else that I didn't realize until the last like 3 years, like super recently, being an empath, since I could feel what was going on with everybody, I thought that what I was perceiving about people feeling was directed at me, when it was actually how they felt about themselves.
Right. Yeah.
Like blew my mind, because I have been taking on baggage of other people my whole life and diminishing myself to make other people feel comfortable and to not step on anybody's toes, or not to be too beautiful or too loud or too anything.
Powerful, strong.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I still deal with that, because people do not like a dissenting vocal woman, even if it is the truth, even if it is fair, they don't like it. And that's changing, fortunately.
Absolutely. We're in the middle of that big shift now, for sure.
Yeah. But
by the way, this Sahara dust is in Austin, Texas. We already have allergy problems here anyway, but it is just like on steroids. It's gray looking, brown looking in the skies outside. So this is why I'm chugging water today, because it's really hard to breathe.
Somebody told me that there's over-pollination and allergy problems in cities because they only plant male trees. And that made me laugh. Because it's just pollen everywhere. It's just tree sperm everywhere.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, back to your story about how you become a healer.
Yeah, so my friend was like, my sister found this healer over the phone, like, and she had her notebook with her, and she was like, look, and it was like a trapped emotion, like despair, age 14, like anger, age 8. And I was like, okay, like that's cool. And so I kind of sat on it and I didn't really reach out. And then 2 weeks later, I reached out, and it's kind of interesting. And I was like, well, I'll try this a couple times. And it was after the third time, she was like, I asked her, because I sing and I act, and I've had a lot of vocal problems. And I was like, is there anything I can do for my singing voice? And she stops and she sounds really concerned over the phone. And she goes, are you a vegan? And I was like, no, I eat whatever I want. And she's like every day? I was like, yeah, like I have dairy and she's like, okay, then this is super weird, but there's something like your body is too alkaline, and somehow that like affects your singing. And what she didn't know is I have an alkaline water machine. And for your body to be alkaline, that's a pretty hard lifestyle to achieve, unless you have one of these alkaline water things and you're drinking a thing of it a day like I do. So she was like, your body, this doesn't make sense since you're not a vegan and you had yogurt this morning, but like your body's too alkaline. And I was like, I have a Kangen water machine and I have high alkalinity water every single day. So after that, it was like a research study. I was like, ooh, what's going to come up? And it got deeper and deeper and deeper. And I started noticing big shifts happening in my life. Like
as you were working with this healer.
Yeah. Like I would like wake up.
And what is this modality called that she was working with?
It's called the emotion code. Okay. So look up the emotion code by Dr. Bradley Nelson. That's his book. And then he has the emotion code and then the body code. Okay. And so what it is so energy exists in all things. Energy is all things. And if you go into a molecule and then you go into an atom, and if you just keep on zooming in on matter, you find that everything is space. Everything is actually more space than it is particle. And so knowing this, even though things seem solid, you're like, okay, well, just because I perceive this thing as solid, it's actually full of space. And what that means is that it's full of consciousness. So there have been studies, I forget the doctor, but the one who proved he showed crystallized water molecules. When you blast a water molecule with a low vibration or a hateful word, it will be amorphous.
Yeah, that's a fascinating study with the water stuff. Yeah.
Right. Whereas if you blast water with the emotion of love or gratitude, you get the most perfect, symmetrical, beautiful crystals. And so if you can do this to water molecules, you can do this to human cells. We are mostly water. So when you talk to yourself negatively, you are enforcing disease in your system and in your brain and in your body. And I have found that depending on where diseases live in the body, that's typically where a lot of emotion has been trapped, either in this lifetime or generationally or both, and they compound each other. Yeah.
So you know, the first time I came into this concept of the dis-ease that we are suffering either emotionally or mentally gets trapped in our body and then creates disease was when I encountered Louise Hay's work in the early 80s. And she was a metaphysical teacher. She passed a few years ago, but Hay House Publishing is her publishing company that Wayne Dyer and Cheryl Richards, a lot of the metaphysical people publish with at her publishing company. But so she figured out, you know, different things in our body and what it was connected to. For example, cancer was long held resentment. And then depending on where it shows up in your body, say for breast cancer, resentment about not getting nurtured, not getting nurturing. You know, cervical cancer could often be trauma around a rape or sexual abuse that wasn't cleared or healed, resentment around that. You know, it's just like, you could just go on and on depending on, you know, brain chemistry brain cancer could be attached to just release toxic, shitty thinking. You know, it's like, so yeah, that your body's giving you messages is very powerful. And so the number one book I have recommended for anybody wanting to dive deeper into this stuff is Louise Hay is the author, You Can Heal Your Life. And she healed herself from cancer, and her story's in the back of it. But she talks about, she gives you, like, whether you're trying to do prosperity or relationships or career, she really gives a lot of information. And in the book is her tracking of all these diseases, diseases, and the probable causes, and an affirmation you can say to shift the energy. So Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. It's been out for 20 years. There was a 20-year anniversary issue that's beautifully done with art, colors, like every page is a piece of artwork. That's my favorite version of it. But there's an old copy with just the text is also excellent. And then there's also just the section with the diseases and the probable causes and the affirmations you say that's called Heal Your Body. And you can buy that just by itself. And you can get both of those books off the Hay House publishing, her publishing house, or I always find copies in the Half Price bookstore here in Austin. It's been out so long, an easy book to find used copies of. So
yeah, that and The Emotion Code by Dr. Bradley Nelson, really good places to start if you're interested in this, or if you have a loved one who's affected by some disease or illness. But there are also so many fascinating things that, like you had mentioned, like, yeah, there are trapped emotions in the body, there are trapped traumas, but there are also idea allergies, which are things when we encounter them, ideas, people, situations where we are like, ah! Like, you know, like it's like
the idea of it creates a reaction. Yeah.
And that can be something that's unhealthy, because it can be money, you know, it can be anything. You can have an idea allergy. You can have a despair anchor, which is something you believe to be true that anchors you in a low vibration, how you feel about yourself and what you're capable of. Yeah. You can have mental projections where it's like having a filter over your eyesight, where you think everybody's an asshole. So you perceive everybody's an asshole, like somebody smiles at you and you're like, that asshole. For some reason.
Right. Yeah, there's that's what I see over years of 32 years of professional psychic experience, but just personal experience in my life, is anybody who hasn't resolved an emotional trauma, something when it happens, it stores in the body, but then also it gets projected onto the world around you, and people see their own stuff and will call you out for the very things that's within them. And for the longest time, I would get in this trap of like, defending myself against this false accusation. I'm a triple Aries. I can get super pissed off about your inaccurate assessment of me and blah. And now I've started to go like, oh, I see that you're projecting your shit onto me. Like, yeah. I'm not even going to engage. It's like, oh, okay. You could see that someone's that's not going to get it. Like you can say, you can get into a fight and argue, and if you got that they're not in a consciousness level to be able to grasp and understand what you're telling them, you're wasting your energy, you're wasting your time. You know, people who are open to listen, and that's the thing. Is like, I feel so. We were talking about the narcissism. So many people just can't even hear someone else. They can't just stop and listen. They're like preparing for what they're going to say next when the other person's talking, or and they're on their phone or whatever. My mom would be on the newspaper. I come to try to talk to her. She'd go, I want to talk to you. Just keep on reading. Like, that's not giving me attention. So
no, we don't live in a society that really nurtures and cares about each other. We live in a society that pits one another against each other. Women are competing for male attention, and males are competing for, you know, and then we're all competing for money, and we're competing for cars, and we're competing for Louis Vuitton bags, and like nobody cares. Honestly, on like a deep level, people care about themselves. So they see your Louis Vuitton bag, and if it matters to them, it makes them feel like worse about themselves when, you know, it doesn't. And I'm not like saying that we shouldn't want things. Like, you want what you want. Like, I don't care. I don't care.
It's the energy of,
it's the value.
Where you place your values. Exactly. Do you value things more than life, you know, human life? So, and I was in a situation this past weekend where friends were yelling at friends when we all want the same results. And it was very triggering for me, because I was like, this is not friendship. This is not love. This is projection. This is fear. This is not a progressive stance. And it was masked behind, I'm a progressive, and, you know, and it's like, yes, but we live in a dualistic society. And if you choose one of those extremes, you're part of the problem. Right. Yeah. So when I first was introduced to Buddhism when I was 21 years old, 36 years ago, one of the first concepts I was taught is that your environment is a reflection of you. It's a reflection of your karma, which is accumulated over lifetimes. And we can't know what our karma is. Even, you know, psychics I've remembered so many of my past lives, so I have more information than the average person does about their past lives, but still there's lots that I haven't seen. But we definitely manifest as male and female. We manifest as the perpetrator and the victim. We do all these, you know, things in past lives that accumulate the collective karma that we're in. And then the environment that we're in is a reflection of that karma. It's also a reflection of we're creating karma right now with every cause we set in the now, right? So added to the karma we can't see from past lives is the karma that we can see if we were conscious or awake from this lifetime, right? And so to me, this was like the biggest aha thing I had encountered at that point, was like this drilling down, really getting it. Like, you mean like when someone treats me as shit and it's their shit and they break on me and it's my karma? Like,
yep.
Like something within your life is drawing that experience to you. Something in your life believes on an unconscious level you deserve to be treated like shit. There's something going on that's a hook inside, or you wouldn't be seeing it showing up outside. So it was like, good news, bad news. Like, bad news, it's on you. Good news is you can transform your karma. You can really shift things. You know, you can, I chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, the painting I did years ago, you know, as a tool to change my karma, to shift that the causes I set today create a completely different future than the causes I set in the past. But so much of the warring and the fight is someone blaming the other person. Like, you did it. And, you know, I learned a lot of time, like when you point one thing, you got three of them pointing back at you. But that, people that can't see their own stuff see it in the projection screen of their life. So blame is like an unnecessary thing, you know, and it doesn't mean you don't address someone's bad behavior or anything, but you know that the reason you're experiencing it is somehow connected to some karma that you need to shift or change if you don't like how it's showing up in your life, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, because we are all humans having this crazy human experience. So being able to be honest with yourself and be like, hey, listen, I'm not perfect. I acknowledge this. I'm going to look into it and see what's there. I get triggered all the time. This past week has been a very hard week for me. The worst possible.
So, would you want to explain what a trigger is?
Yes.
You may not know it.
So something happens externally and something inside you freaks out. Not just like a little
overreaction to the situation.
Yeah, like something very, very big and personal takes place when you're triggered.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great. Now that I'm a healer, I just go, can I heal this now? And I get my responses and I see what comes up. And I don't judge myself for it, because we also don't live in a society that allows us to be honest and to process our emotions. People go, anger is bad. And I'm like, not if it is anger used correctly. There's an Aristotle quote.
It's a natural human response to something that's unjust.
Yeah. And so there's an Aristotle quote about like anger in the right measure, in the right direction, in the right moment, in the right, I'm butchering it, right. But it's the most powerful tool out there. Mm-hmm. And people.
And Thich Nhat Hanh wrote a book about anger. He's a Buddhist monk, different tradition of Buddhism than what I practice. But his whole thing is that you've got to soothe the inner child, because usually behind anger is actually hurt. Like you were initially hurt and then you got pissed off about being hurt. Because we're usually hiding behind, like, anger is sad, hurt, you know. And so we can have layers of the emotion that we have to remove before we get to the core stuff. Like my father committed suicide in 1978 when I was 15 years old. I was like spinning around PTSD way before I ever heard that term. I was never diagnosed with that, but I know now, of course, that I was suffering from PTSD because he shot himself in our home, and I was home when he did it. So years and years and years of talk therapy and group therapy, primal therapy, healing modalities of everything I could get across to try to get out and clear and access this stuff. And what I found out when I first sat down with my first psychic was that she opened up things for me in the space of a 20-minute reading that usually took 6 months of therapy to get to. Like, she already knew my story right from the start. And here's your message, instead of like, here's all the catch up, blah, 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 that, you know, all the drama story that you need to know so you understand where I am right now. And like, no, it's about going in right now. The premise behind Buddhahood, the Buddha's message was that everyone is a Buddha. That's what he wrote in the Lotus Sutra. Like, we're all Buddhists. That's the core. And so as a Buddhist, that's how I like to look at everybody in the world. I don't look at Democrat people. Are you Democrat? Well, yeah, I'm sure, as the hippie chick psychic person, they're going to assume I'm a left-wing radical liberal. Well, I don't get into politics. Our political system is effed and it's not working. And you can't divide our diversity of our country into two things that try to war and fight with each other and don't care about each other's feelings. Like the whole mask thing, people not being willing to wear masks, they're my right. It's like, because they cannot care about other human beings. It's a void. It's a serious, serious problem we have on this planet right now, is this narcissistic toxicity, you know. So
yeah, and unfortunately, I see it on both sides, and I hate it. Mm-hmm. I hate it, because there are actual injustices happening, and it's just there's no progress because everybody's just screaming at each other instead of saying, right, I want to understand what your needs are, and I want you to understand what my needs are, and let's find a way where both of our needs can get met, and we can make some solutions that escape from
what a concept, that we might try to shoot for a win-win, or where everyone wins and there isn't a loser. You know, that's an old school paradigm that somebody has to be a winner and somebody has to be a loser.
Well, and we're outgrowing that because people aren't Christian and other. People aren't white and other anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It is, people aren't straight or gay anymore. People aren't just men or women anymore. There's a blending happening. And so it needs to happen in our structures, or our structures are going to be torn down.
No, they're not. Not if, they are being torn down. There's no question about our structures being torn down.
They are crumbling. But how destructive is it going to be as us as people if we don't embrace one another and talk about how
come from the heart, come from a higher spiritual place, because these bodies and whatever the ego's fighting about right now, the bodies get put down, and it's the spiritual soul, the energy that goes on. It's like you're fighting over spacesuits, like, like that. I mean, that's the kind of analogy I look for it. So I'm talking about just my experience of doing all these different modalities in healing. And so when I've, you've been a client of mine for a few years, and so that you had let me know we're now doing this new type of healing work, and offered to just gift you with a session to experience it. And so from the very first session with you, I felt something shift, and it felt so clear. Like in Buddhism, we talk about when you change your own karma, and we do the process of human revolution, which is like changing your own life, and then your environment being a reflection of yourself. Everything you do to change your own life affects everyone around you, the planet, generations before you and after you, right? So there's this energetic line of beyond the DNA connection. There's all these other things going in. And so in Buddhism, I was taught that when you change your own karma, you change your descendants, your ancestors' karma that have passed. That, it's kind of like this whole time frame contingent. Like I've done past life regressions for people that they go into a concurrent lifetime somewhere else, like that's happening at the same time as this one. Like I've tapped into all kinds of very bizarre things, and like psychics. There are so many things out there we have no idea about. There's a spiritual realm that's vast, and just as how there's diversity of people and bodies on the planet, there's a diversity in the spirit realm. And yes, there's some demonic energies in spirit realm, but if you're doing spiritual practices, those are the ones that are hanging around you. You get the angels and the archangels and the sprites and the beautiful things. You get cute little Lego man that can be your support, your spirit guide. Like we all have them around us, and again, psychically they show up. Some people will hear them talking. Some people just feel prompted. Like I struggled for a long time to try to see my spirit guides. I never have gotten a visual. It's an energy. I feel like it's like I tap in and there's a flow going, and I have literal, energy, because it'll like be goosebumps down my arms, goosebumps on my face. I can just feel an energy flow that moves through my body when I'm channeling. So, I call them downloads, when it just comes and moves through.
And I want to touch back on the generational stuff, because you do inherit generational wounds, and I can clear those. And what happens is when I'm clearing them, it's cleared from everyone you inherited it from, but also everyone who inherited it from them. So when you're healing yourself, I think the furthest back I've ever cleared something generational was 336 generations, which is like pre-biblical.
Right.
Like that is old trauma.
That's some heavy karma from some old heavy karma.
I may have healed a piece of half the planet in that session, which is crazy to think about. But that's why healing is so important. It has a ripple effect when you heal yourself, when you heal other people.
Right.
But what's really cool is the generational stuff. If you're still in contact with members of your family, you see them changing, and they have no idea. They're just like, oh, like my life's better than it was a year ago. Like, I'm so much better. And they're like, no idea. My spiritual practice, my daily practice keeps all my children functioning. Because I learned early on, when I didn't do my spiritual practice enough, my oldest daughter, when it was just the two of us, she was a little hellion. And when I did do my practice, our relationship was beautiful. It's like, oh my God, it's going to be really that much in my face. So I can't not do my practice. Because when you do any kind of spiritual practice, it raises your life condition. And, so in Buddhism, we talk about 10 worlds or 10 life conditions that we all inherently possess in a body right now, from hell to Buddhahood. You can be in a state of hell
It's not when you cross over. I mean, it can be when you cross over, but it can be right here in this world where you're feeling like hell. Your life, so you look around you, it's hell. That's the life condition that we can have when we're fully alive. The next life condition up from that is hunger. It's like the big hole that we look for something outside ourselves to fill. It's human nature to have this hunger nature. It's a low life condition. Up from that is animality, when people treat each other like animals. They're fighting over stuff and they don't care. They have no consciousness for how their actions affect other people. That's an animal. That's not a human being. That's an animal. Yeah. And then up from that is anger, which is closely tied to arrogance, because when someone's usually angry, it's like your fault and they're better. It's just they're right and you're wrong, kind of thing. And so those are the four lower worlds that everyone has. And so up from anger is tranquility, and things are just peaceful and calm. Meditation practices can bring you into tranquility. Up from tranquility is rapture, when you're like, oh my God, you get the great orgasm, like piece of chocolate cake was amazing. You win the lottery, you know, whatever. The euphoric lifts. They don't last. Rapture doesn't last. It'll come back down to whatever. We all have sort of the base pulse of where we operate from. When I started practicing, it was hell and hunger and malady and anger. The lower four worlds is pretty much where I was hanging. And right now, that's where most of the planet is hanging, in this lower paradigm. So up from realization, these higher four are learning, when your mind's actually expanding beyond what you already know. You're willing to be open for new things to come in. Realization, when you have these aha moments, are you like, all of a sudden, like I said, when I had your environment's reflection of yourself, I was like, oh. It was like, you know, click, right? Realization. So that's a high life condition when you're having realizations. Bodhisattva is the next one up. When we're here to help everybody. We realize we're all here together. Everybody is important. We're all on this one, we're all one thriving, beating unit all together, really. And then Buddhahood, which is not some guru special thing. No, Buddhahood lies within each of us. The enlightened spiritual self, wise, compassionate, joyful. And when you're in Buddhahood, your environment becomes the Buddha land. People bring offerings to the Buddha. It's a whole different story than when you're in hell, right? So spiritual practice raise your life condition up above the collective.
Well, and it's measurable. Science can measure this. Like, you can look up something called the Hawkins scale, and it has shame is the lowest vibration, and it resonates at like 20 hertz. Mm-hmm. And then enlightenment.
The first time you showed me that, it looked like the life condition chart from Buddhism.
Yeah. And then enlightenment is at the top. And, you know, there's everything in between. And somebody at like the vibration of like 500, which is like pretty good. That's like a pretty positive person overall, if that's like their general vibration. Mm-hmm. They offset something like 175,000 people who resonate at shame. There are 12 known people who resonate at enlightenment alive right now, but their vibration is so high.
Wait. So who's collecting that data? Where is the source that says there's 12 enlightened people on the planet right now?
Like full on like Jesus consciousness people.
But I mean, where do you go to? I mean, who's collecting that data?
It somewhere. I have a PDF.
I'm gonna get some more water. You keep talking.
Yeah. So the vibration of like the people who are at the highest enlightenment, those 12 people offset something like 500 million people or something. Mm-hmm. Just those 12 people, because their vibration is so high. Mm-hmm. So right now we're sort of descending as a planet. I think that's kind of obvious. We're descending into darker and darker energies. And
I feel like that. I look at it as just the old paradigm. So think about the karma for America, for example, that we came and stole the land away from the people's land who it was and killed them and like just took over. And then we stole people from their land to help build our land. So the whole paradigm of America has been, we will look at it karmically. You can't set causes like that without getting effect. It's a law of physics, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And so if you set causes like that, you're going to get the effects back from those causes. And it's not pretty. You know, most people will be apt to blame something outside of themselves instead of going, oh, okay, what did I do? So I wanted to talk about where the planets are right now, because we're kind of touching on that subject right now too. So today the sun's at 7 degrees in Cancer, which is a very spiritual placement for us getting in touch with our feelings and feeling things out spiritually today for all of us on the planet. Moon has been in Libra, moving through Libra, which makes everybody want to try to get along today, try to balance it out, try to make things work. A real emphasis on relationships when the moon is going through Libra. Mercury is retrograde, 11 degrees Cancer today. So the planet of communication is going backwards in Cancer, which is about feelings. So it's a lot of thinking back about it's a great time to get some healing work, right? Because you can go back and reprogram what you think. Like, I like to use the analogy for the negative mental programming is like, go back to the old vinyl records, and when you would have a skip, some songs would make the skip and it would keep on going. Other songs, the scratch was so deep, it would get in that groove and and you had to literally go over, pick the nail up, put it down in a new spot, right? So this is, to me, the metaphor of what we have to do when we catch ourselves on a negative old thought pattern and we become aware of it. It's like, oh no, that's an old story. Pick it up, put it down in the new spot, because we didn't get that deeply woven groove overnight. And we were talking about inheriting stuff from our parents and stuff. But the other thing is, like, empathic people that are emotional sponges like you and I are, what was so phenomenal to me as I was digging deeper and deeper and deeper in healing work over time was realizing that I had my father's wounded infant trapped inside my body. My father, his mother committed suicide when he was an infant. Postpartum depression killed her. And so, there was these, I remember like going, hi, my father's wounded infant in me, what? It was just like, what? I'm like, that's operating something like, and like, my mother was very negative and critical thinking. Like, I've never heard anything positive from my mother. Still today, I'm 57 years old. My mother has never said, you did a great job. I really believe in you. I love you. She would write love, mom, and stuff, but I had no positive messaging whatsoever. And then beyond that, it wasn't until much later that I started pulling out the covert psychic abuse that I received from my mother, which is she harbored negative feelings towards me and negative thoughts about me because she wasn't dealing with her own shit. And rather than verbally projecting it onto me, she was holding these negative things and seeing them in me. And I was just feeling unloved, unsupported, like I didn't really have any actual proof of why I felt so shitty, and what, so just that negative pattern. And then what our parents think is often our own negative mental patterns, for sure. Okay, so Mercury retrograde, and people are like, because it can really wreak havoc on relationships and our cars and our phones and our computers. But it's an opportunity to go back and repattern our thinking about things and what we think about things. It's really powerful in that way. So Venus is now direct. It's at 5 degrees Gemini. So again, the planet that represents what we love, what we're passionate about, is going to go backward, forward now. I mean, it's already been traipsing through this period. It was at this point at the beginning of April. So just think back. What have you been learning about relationships since the first part of April? We've had it go retrograde, which is a review of like, where am I supposed to be putting my energies? Who do I love? What do I love? What's important to me? I've had past life. People just come into my life I haven't known yet this lifetime. It's very classic for exes to reach out to you during Mercury retrogrades or Venus retrogrades. And so I had a lot of that kind of thing going on. What it showed up for me is I was drawn to really diving into more practice with my instruments, because that's what I love and passionate about. And I hadn't really been having a lot of time for piano and guitar and flute and all the other things that I'm juggling and doing. So Venus retrograde, I've been like playing my instruments more than I have ever, really, really ever. Okay, Mars today has moved into Aries. It's at 0 degrees. So 0 is like holding space. It's also about setting boundaries. And so I started feeling this coming. Mars is the male principle in the universe. And so Mars is at its home in Aries. And so usually Mars takes 6 weeks to transit a sign. It's parking it in Aries till January. And not only that, when it first moves in, we all may have, like us, it's been hanging out in Pisces, where we've all been kind of feeling nebulous, have been drawn to spiritual practices, but we may actually all feel like getting things done now with Mars going into Aries. We have more energy, the planet taking action is in Aries, it's a fire sign, it's a great time to initiate things. The problem is it's going to be traipsing over Chiron, which is the wounded healer. It's going to be traipsing over Black Lilith, our deep fears, and then it's going to go and be bedfellows with Eris, his sister, that's a war goddess on the battlefield next to Aries, who Eris is already locked into a square with Pluto, death and transformation. And so when Mars joins, and conjunct Pluto today exactly is Jupiter, which expands things. So Pluto, it's not a question of if it will transform something, it's how it will transform something. It will leave something completely changed when it goes through the sign. And so with then Jupiter expanding that principle, even more intense. And then the war goddess Eris is in an exact square with Pluto and Jupiter for the rest, well, not Jupiter, because Jupiter will be moving around, but with Pluto for the rest of the year. And so when Mars goes up and it conjoins with Eris, Mars and Eris together are going to be squaring and going retrograde. Then when it goes retrograde, it's going to be squaring Pluto and Jupiter and Saturn, which is really where I see that we could extinguish ourselves on this planet, because people are already so pissed off, and anybody who's not working out their shit. I mean, think of the times that we're in right now. You know, my father committed suicide. He killed himself. In this day and age, people kind of bent on killing themselves seem to want to take a many people out before they do that. So we've just shifted so anybody that's not dealing with their emotions or feelings, I mean, pissy, angry, it's going to be everywhere, because it's like the hornets are out with them. And so this is like, it's a great time to clear your anger with Mars and Aries, right? It's a good time to put energy in, where do I want to take action in my life? And I haven't been taking action. But seriously, when all these squares and things, and Mars goes retrograde in September. So from September to November is the period where Mars is going to be retrograde, where it's going to be the gnarliest on the planet. But we already have Uranus and Taurus, which has been shaking things up on the planet, because Taurus is the Earth. For the last couple of years, it's got 6 more years of shaking up the Earth. Next year, if we make it through this year, next year, Uranus is in a square with Saturn, which is our rules, our institutions, our governments, for 8 months. So this higher principle of Uranus that shakes things, tears things down, to replace it with something more spiritual, is going to be locked into a square with the planet where our institutions, our governments, our laws, our rules are also. It's going to be shaking up even more things next year. So that we're really in a transformational period for the next 2 years. Pluto moves into Aquarius in 2024. So that's when things will feel different. Actually, a couple years from now, we'll start getting some traction. I feel like we're going to be able to see now how the new paradigm is operating, because there is a new paradigm. Pluto is destroying the old one in Capricorn, which is the old school male patriarchal principle. It is, greed that's most important. I wrote some notes about what Mars represents, the male principle, right? And so the male energy on this planet has been out of balance on this planet for a while. We've been rebalancing that. The whole last year and a half with the North Node moving through Cancer was directing all of this to listen to our own divine feminine, men as well as women. Listen to yourself, listen to your intuition, care for your body, care for the planet, care for each other. The male paradigm is more like power over people. I got to control, I got to win, I got to get all the toys. I mean, the out of balance male principle. That's not the natural. The natural male principle is protective and supportive and solid and,
Vital.
out of balance male is to be the best, and men don't cry, you don't show your feelings, you know, and do what I say. And, you know, that kind of energy is super intensive. And, you know, this paradigm of people running to try to, you know, get all the toilet paper so nobody else has some. Like, it's that greed, is the fear is underneath that, right? Because they're afraid that there's not enough. And so this is the most toxic principle. Well, not the most, it's one of the most toxic principles that are operating in almost everyone on the planet right now, is this paradigm of not enough. Because the truth is, there's an abundance. There's enough for everyone. There's enough for everything you need. If you believe that, you will manifest that, you will create that. If you believe there's not enough, then you'll be fighting. Like, I have 6 kids, you know, dinner time was like, wow, because you had to get yours first or you may not have some, you know, so that kind of, but if there's an abundance, which I always created lots of food so my kids didn't have that dynamic, because there was always way more food than they could eat, so that nobody would be afraid there wasn't enough. But that is a super deep unconscious thing. It was running my life for the longest time, of like, it showed up in me wanting to stuff food, or, you know, it's like binge spend or whatever. It's like, no, and you're not usually conscious of this operating system that's running your show, right?
Right. Yeah, it's again that duality. It's saying if you have it, I can't have I can't have something like it. But we've also sort of shoved down our throats, at least in America, this sort of capitalistic thing. It's like, you need to be making this much money, and you need to have this car and this house, and you need to have kids by this age. And that is literally not possible right now. Your generation is taking care of their parents and their kids.
Yeah.
And so my generation feels stuck because we can't afford homes. I mean, especially not with
your generation is probably wondering if there's ever even a future to step into. So I was, you know, kind of given the worst case scenario that if there's going to be an exodus on this planet, it probably will be this year or next year. The other thing I've been getting psychically is that the ring of fire is going to be activated. So the ring of fire goes up the west coast of the United States over into, look it up, ring of fire. And I get goosebumps now, even as I start talking about it again, that this is where we're going to have an activation. This is where, if you ever studied science, that the plates are all lined up. Like, this is not something that should be, oh my God, I can't believe there's all these earthquakes going down, when like, you built your home on a fault line. So anyone along the ring of fire, I want to give you, you know, if you've been thinking about moving, something within you's going, I'm thinking about moving, that may be your higher self trying to say, keep you out of here now, right? I feel like the energy vortexes are going to be safe places to be, but listen to your intuition about that stuff. I also feel like all the volcanoes are going to go off on the planet at once, and earthquakes, like the earth is going to be like retching at the same time that we're having strife between people. And I see that as crazies going off, like we've already been experiencing in our dynamic ever since Columbine. In this climate, when so many people have been home, and the mental illness pieces really scare me. And what the acting out that everybody can do. Like, you can get terrified of what the worst case scenario, when everybody's angry and everybody's warring and fighting. But the construction of this country, I really think we're going to be scrapping it and rebuilding. Like, it's like, and it may show up as civil war. Literally, it may be attacks from foreign invaders, and I'm talking, like, I really feel like aliens are kind of around to help us transform right now. The higher evolved beings, if they have the evolution to be able to travel to our country, our planet from theirs, they're also going to be more spiritually evolved. And I feel an alien presence also have stepped in. Like, the spiritual guides have, like, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I feel like when I first started feeling guides, you know, to where it feels like there's a choir of guides around now. Yes. So there is a beautiful hope in all this for those of us that are conscious and can raise our life condition to know, like you said, that we're affecting not only our own life, but many people. When we do that, it is go time. Light workers, there's a reason that term came about. It's time to work. It's go time. We do our work. We shift the paradigm on the planet. The old male patriarchal thing crumbles, and a new paradigm gets to come out. Like, we're at this pivotal time where a new birth or rebirth of something beautiful can really take place. But you have to have the old stuff fall to the ground before you can build something new. Like, you go on a great piece of land, but the house is falling apart. What do? You take the house down and you build up a new house. It's basically what we're doing on the whole globe. And then everyone within their own lives, depending on where this shows up in your chart, there's some sort of deep major thing that you're shifting in your life. Everyone on the planet. It's not like, oh, sometimes people, no, everyone on the planet is shifting something fundamental in their lives right now. Like, we're all doing, again, it's all hands on deck, and it's going to be make or break. And I really feel like the paradigm of fear is what is the plague. But think of every century, there's been some sort of plague that neutrally wakes up the planet. It's been the karma of the planet. Like, that's not actually surprising either. If you really research history, I mean, it took out lots of people way before social media, right? So,
and I think people thought that, like, it couldn't happen to us because we have the internet and we have cars and we have, restaurants and McDonald's. Like, oh, nothing's ever going to happen to us again. It's like, well, we're not in the driver's seat. We don't tell the earth what to do.
Right.
We don't tell the stars what to do. We don't tell the spirits what to do. They were here first, and we're transmuting the darkness through our physical bodies, through our physical experience, into raising the vibration of the planet. So that's where my work comes in, is I can literally raise your personal vibration by spiritually, surgically removing your projections, your trapped emotions, your genealogical traumas, your
Well, think about it in terms of, like, when you lay down on a massage table and you get a really good massage, you get deeply relaxed in a way you couldn't really do on your own. That healer's help helps you release in a deeper, more powerful way. Excuse me. And this is, what I'm seeing with your work is it's just like an efficient system to just cut through the BS and get things done. It's kind of like, so, the Buddhism I practice, Nichiren Buddhism, is based from Nichiren, who is alive in the 1200s in Japan, studying all the Buddhist teaching, trying to find out what the core of what he was trying to say, which I already talked was about, that everyone has the potential for enlightenment. So he started chanting the title of the Lotus Sutra, and that's where the Nam-myoho Renge Kyo comes from. So beyond having the concept that we all have a Buddha nature, is one thing to go, oh yeah, I got behind that the first time I heard it. I'm like, yeah, that feels like right. Yep, I believe that. That feels truth. It feels like resonates as truth. Whereas I grew up Episcopal, and Immaculate Conceptions would always hit me as, that doesn't feel like truth. It's like certain things would hit me and like, oh, that doesn't feel right. Praying to God felt like praying to Santa Claus to me. It's like,
right.
And when they start describing the mystic energy of the universe as a myoho, I'm like, oh, I can get behind that. Yeah, there's this mysterious, intelligent energy that permeates the universe. To me, if someone asked me what God is, that's what I'd say it is. In Buddhism, we call that myoho, and it permeates the DNA and everything, and we have an amazingly unlimited potential in every way. We really are not limited unless we limit ourselves by what, like, well, if you say I can't do that, you won't be able to do it. Like,
we're also spoon-fed a certain image of what to be, and we have the veil of forgetfulness, right? We're born into this 3D world, and we didn't ask to be here, and what are these, and like, who are you, and like, they're like, we're family, and you're a girl, and we live in Texas, and Texas is this way, and your school, and so we're like, oh, okay, all right, like, I am just taking everything that's being fed to me, and they call that in Hinduism Maya. It's the veil of Maya, and it's like in the Matrix, it's the blue pill. Maya is the blue pill. I was born.
That's such a great series of films, by the way. If anybody ever, your generation may not all have watched it. The Matrix. Not everybody has seen that, but it's a great trilogy.
There's a reason it was so popular, is because I think the world resonated with it, because everyone knows on a spiritual level that that's how it be sometimes. Like,
a whole lot of truth in there. Yeah.
And so people are walking around in like their meat suits being like, this is my identity and I do this thing and this is how I feel and this is where I come from. And the more you heal and take a step back and sort of disconnect yourself from your identity and just being the observer,
Mm-hmm.
the more you start to be able to be like, okay, I can be in control of this.
Right.
I can start changing this. And my awakening was extraordinarily painful because I was at school and I was the empty shell of the happy kid that I had been. And I had a bunch of people being like, you are this way, you are this, you are
You need this.
and
Yeah.
like if you would just embrace who you really are, which is a Texas debutante, then you would be more successful and people would like you better. And it's like, wow, that's really harmful language.
You know what's so interesting about your stating of that? Because my father was the manager for human resources for Sun Oil Company in Dallas when he took his own life. So he had all this stress, but he would have I would have been on the Debbie truck that you were on had he stayed alive. And so instead at 50, I'm going like, why am I here? What's life about? So the gift in his death was that it was my start of really being awake this lifetime, you know. So that's where like tragedy can really be that opportunity that's beautiful. And like you said, in Buddhism, when I have faced with anything that I'm changing to try to, like whatever it presents itself as an obstacle or a wall or whatever, a situation with someone else is not going well, I always chant to turn poison to medicine or chant to turn an obstacle into a benefit. Then you're not afraid of anything that's coming your way. It's kind of like, okay, what's next? What's the next thing I'm going to use to change my karma? Bring it. You know, like, if you're not afraid, then you just simply transform what's in front of you or inside of you to heal. What comes up, what gets triggered. Oh, instead of going, oh, look, I have this wound here. I need to go in after them. You know, then it can just be information when you're noticing yourself getting triggered. Okay, I need to go heal this. This is a spot where I need healing. And then you can go to Paige and go, okay, I've noticed I'm getting triggered around this thing. And, you know, she can dive in like a surgeon and extricate the stuff that's being held there. It's really, really amazing work that you're doing. And it's, I just love that at your age, you're already stepping up to be a healer and being in your power. You're going to be serving so many people. I mean, I could be your mother. You're the age of my second child. I feel you as a dear friend. And I think that's what we all need to kind of get. Like, that's like when I grew up, the paradigm was be seen and not heard. Like the parents had the power, children have no power. You don't have any power or say so in your life until you're a grown up. That's how things are. And so you do what I say, you know, except that I was already trying to feel what felt right for me intuitively. I didn't realize that at the time, but like I really was trying to feel my way through right from the beginning. And because I was getting these paradigms that didn't fit at all with me, I felt so stuck. I couldn't find myself. One of the reasons I ended up in Shoal Creek Hospital the second semester of my junior year in college is because I was forced to myself. I started off as a business major at UT. Can you imagine me as a business major? I mean, I have the head, I have the smarts for it, but like my eyes were starting to cross in micro and macroeconomic classes. I'm like, wait, hold up. No, this isn't it. You know, and so I just kept trying to find myself and find my path. And you know, I had a horrible eating disorder in college, bulimia, and I was just binging and purging all day long and wasn't getting nutrition to my brain. I ended up catatonically depressed and in the local mental hospital here for 7 weeks. I turned 21 in Shoal Creek Hospital. So when I say, and people look at me now, they go, you were depressed? Like, no, yeah, catatonically depressed. And they also they had me on 350 milligrams a day of an antidepressant. I mean, I was like walking around just comatose. So the first intuitive decision I ever made to go against what I was told was to pour those meds down the toilet when I left the hospital. I was like, my gut was going BS. No. I knew even logically that if I wasn't eating proper nutrition, my brain wasn't getting proper food, and it was very much connected to my nutrition or lack thereof. And then like the Louise Hay work that I was talking about earlier, in her work, bulimia is extreme self-hatred, which was totally the reality of how I felt about myself inside. And so how was it showing up with an eating disorder where I was hating on myself, And so what was the antidote for that? It wasn't like a treatment center. It was something that shifted over time and gradually fell away as a behavior pattern as I learned to infuse more real self-love and self-care, genuine. It's kind of like when you hear, oh, everyone's a Buddha. I can get behind that. When you take that in, no, everyone is a Buddha. You got it all covered up. You don't have to go get it. It's already wired and fully functional in operation within you. You just have to pick up tools to tap into it. And what's so cool about Nichiren is that he left these tools behind to access your Buddha nature, one of which is the mantra chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and the other is the Gohonzon, a scroll that he made, which is a visual mirror of your own enlightenment. And so when I encountered this Buddhism for the first time, it took beyond concept to tools. Like, yeah, thank you. And we recite part of the Lotus Sutra in our morning and evening prayers along with the mantra, and we call that Ganyo. And it's the portion where the Buddha is saying everyone has the potential for enlightenment, and we're all Buddhas. So we just repeat that in Chinese Sanskrit, and that even though like Nam-myoho Renge-kyo means to fuse your life with the mystic law of cause and effect through sounds, rhythms, and vibrations. It pulls out your Buddha nature and infuses with the universe. It's a mantra that does that. And so I've gone to world peace meetings with members from all over the world that can't even have a conversation, but we all chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in the same phonetics. We all do Ganyo in the same phonetics because it's Chinese Sanskrit. So even the Chinese and the Japanese members aren't actually speaking the Sanskrit language. And so it's just, talk about empowering when you can join with other people that you can't communicate, but we can all join together and chant and bring out our Buddha nature and raise the vibration of the planet. And so this Buddhism is being practiced in 192 territories around the world. If you want more information about the Buddhism I practice, it's you can go to sgi-usa.org, which is Soka Gakkai International, of course, the United States of America. Okay, so every morning on the days that I do these Psyched Up videos, I get the download for what's going to be going on about our call this week. I got a cool download to do an interview with Paige, and it's been really awesome. I have been reading, just as a daily spiritual practice, I've been reading in the Lotus Sutra every morning, along with my daily guidances. And this is by Burton Watson. And so today's reading, my guides were like, yeah, no, read this story. Because this is the Buddha talking. And the Buddha was 500 or 600 years before Christ, right? We start our timer with the birth of Christ, right, on this planet. Well, not in China, but like here in our side of the world. And so anything before Christ was born is BC. So the Buddha was around 500-600 years before Christ. So this is his writings from that time period. The Buddha says to Shariputra, it is just as you have said, he is a father to the world. And I want to stop and say, he's talking about the Buddha. And because I believe we all have a Buddha nature. So when I've been reading the Lotus Sutra, he's talking about me. Like he's talking about, so I read it really personally too. And even when it says he is born, I put she is born. I don't know if you can see my rib. So anyway, so let me back up. Okay. Very good, very good. It is just as you have said. And Shariputra, the thus come one, which is another name for the Buddha, is like this. That is, he is a father to all the world. Sound familiar? I mean, I really believe that the missing period when we don't know what happened with Jesus between age 12 and 30 or whatever, and he was learning about Buddhism because that seems like calling the divine a father came from the Buddha. His fears, cares, anxieties, ignorance, and misunderstanding have long come to an end, leaving no residue. I love that as an image for healing. Like, yep, no residue of stuff left. He has fully succeeded in acquiring measureless insight, powers, and freedom from fear, and gaining great supernatural powers and the power of wisdom. He is endowed with the parameters of expedient means and of wisdom. His great pity and great compassion, constant and unflagging at all times. He seeks what is good and will bring benefit to all. she is born into the threefold world, a burning house, rotten and old, in order to save living beings from the fires of birth, aging, sickness, and death, care, suffering, foolishness, misunderstanding, and the three poisons, to teach and convert them and enable them to attain supreme perfect enlightenment. He sees living beings seared and consumed by birth, aging, sickness, and death, care and suffering, sees them undergo many kinds of pain because of the five desires and the desire for wealth and profit. Again, because of their greed and attachment and striving, they undergo numerous pains in their present existence. And later they undergo the pain of being reborn in hell or as beasts or hungry spirits. So basically, if you set really straight up causes, that's you come back not so happy. Even if they are reborn in the heavenly realm or in the realm of human beings, they undergo the pain of poverty and want, the pain of parting from loved ones, the pain of encountering those they detest, all these many different kinds of pain. Yet living beings, drowned in the midst of all this, delight and amuse themselves, unaware, unknowing, without alarm or fear. They feel no sense of loathing and make no attempt to escape. In this burning house that is the threefold world, they race about to east and west, and though they encounter great pain, they are not distressed by it. Shariputra, when the Buddha sees this, then he thinks to himself, I am the father of living beings, and I should rescue them from their sufferings and give them the joy of the measureless and boundless Buddha wisdom, so that they may find their enjoyment in that. So this greed has been around on the planet for a long time. The Buddha is speaking pretty eloquently about greed and attachment back, So what do you think about that, Paige? What does that stir up for you, that passage?
It just, I feel like that. I'm just like, I feel like I'm watching everybody just choosing their own shit over and over and over again and not taking any accountability or really wanting to change their surroundings because they want to be popular or they want to be with the, like, seen a certain way or perceived a certain way. And it's so painful, especially being an empath. I can look at somebody and see their pain and understand their pain for them and not do anything. I can't fix people who don't call me, who don't,
or they're not well. If they can't see what they're doing or don't want to see what they're doing, you can't help anybody who doesn't want to be helped. Like, that's what the codependent usually does, is she can see what the partner needs to do, because the healer can see people's potential. They can see their Buddha nature. But I see so many women, men too, that are drawn into the healing profession in whatever way, get into relationships with partners who in reality should be clients, because the energy is going one day, they're healing the other person's the taker, one person's the giver, the other person's taking. That's the narcissistic codependent thing, right? Mm-hmm. And the narcissist, it's not even occurring to them that it should give back. And then the person giving is thinking, I'm going to give like this, and I'm going to give back in the same way I'm giving to this person, right? If I just keep pouring in more, they'll get it. They'll change. They'll do what they need to do to shift. So really,
no,
people
they won't. No, they won't.
What you see is what you see, and that's what they are. I mean, ideally, if people are doing a spiritual path, they are evolving and growing, right? I made the mistake of assuming, since I had exes that were practicing this Buddhism, that I would be safe in relationship with them because they would be doing their human revolution and transforming it. But the problem is, I wasn't accepting of where they were. I wanted them to change. And I didn't realize that there was a manipulation going on my end that wasn't fair, because I wasn't loving them unconditionally exactly how they are right now. It's like, I needed them to change and be different to be better suited for me.
Right.
But I didn't pick different people. I didn't pick, partners and not clients. And I see this dynamic over and over. But I can really see he really has the most amazing potential in the world. Yeah, we all do. What are they doing? Are they walking in their talk? What you see, what does their life look like? What does their home look like? What does the relationships of the people around them look like? You get lots of indications about someone when you, like, what is their circle of friends like? You get a lot of information, just what is someone's close circle of friends and what that vibe feels like, or, yeah, anyway, your turn. Take a drink of water.
Yeah, it's hard. It's painful because I really do see the good in people, but people mostly show up and show out for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who are there for you, there won't be a question. I always, because I'm empathic, and I never felt like I was enough. I always poured my love into everybody else because I was like, oh, if I pour all my love in all these people, they're going to be nice to me.
Right.
It's not true.
Right.
In fact, a friend that I've had for 6 years, I just last week I was like sayonara, and that came with some other ripples of betrayal. But for 6 years I've gone, something's not right here. I don't feel safe, but I'm just going to keep on smiling and acting like it's fine because this hurts me, and I want them to stop hurting me. So it's like I keep taking the bait. And being somebody who they could use to make themselves feel better. The unfortunate situation was, I didn't realize that I had more of these people around me than I thought. And that was a shocking realization for me, because it's like, okay, I have to take accountability for playing into those relationships and ignoring my better judgment, which was like, something doesn't smell right. And the friendships that do feel good, I don't have to question it. It's the easiest thing in the world to be honest with them. Like it feels like home. But if there's a tinge of like, that person wants me to fail. Right. That person resents me.
I don't trust this person. Like, there's something like, are they going to be in my room stealing from me when I turn my back? Like, you can get it like,
here's something else. They can hurt you psychically before they hurt you physically. And that's something else I can clear. There are something known as saboteur energies, which can be like an energetic knife in the back, energetic noose around the neck, energetic weapon, control mechanism, ball and chain. It could be anything that somebody puts on you. People,
you've pulled off some stuff on me that other people tried to place onto me in sessions we've done. So it's like, it's kind of like someone's out there with their voodoo doll or something. It's kind of the equivalent of like, I'm going to do my voodoo doll. But people do negative, hostile things from afar. One of the reasons on Facebook, but every time I find someone who's like just trying to like send me, they wanted to be my friend because they think, men, I could sleep with her, right? And so like, no, I set boundaries with 2 men on Facebook that were messaging me. I'm like, I don't have time to like interact with you. And which is the truth. I don't have time to spend time conversing with someone I don't know at all on Facebook Messenger when I get like 20 messages a day from different people. Like, I don't have time to do that. So I was just setting a very clear boundary with this guy saying, I appreciate meeting you as a friend, a little conversation, but really, I don't feel called to develop a relationship with you. So please enjoy my posts. I don't have anything more to offer you. And he came back with, you bitch, and that. I just like unloaded verbally on me. Which of course I just like blocked. And then another guy did the same thing. It's like, this is that male energy of denial that just wants to, it's you, kind of thing. I do have a funny story, because I've had 3 boys and 3 girls in my children. And I really wanted to have male children so I could understand men. And I got it down. It's a very simple thing, really. They grabbed the penis from the womb. And I took it so personally. Like, it's like, and it's not like if we had something dangling in the arm's reach as women, like we'd play with it too. Ours is hidden secrets. We can't like play with ourselves and like we have an intention to go there. Like they can actually bump there, like it's just out and about, and they think about it all the time. And men are usually wired to come from their heads and their brains, and women usually come from their feelings. And I do have friends that have those roles reversed. People can have those signals shifted, but the basic male paradigm is an energy that comes from the brain and the head, and the females is coming from the heart, from the emotional space. And women just want to be heard. Just listen to me, share my feelings. Like, All you have to do is just hold the space while she shares her feelings. Whereas men want to fix the problem. Like, you're telling me this so I can fix your problem, right? Because they're like, what can I do to fix your problem? I just want you to listen. Like, it's a hard concept to get, right? For some people.
I would like to add too, they're super important because men don't like feelings. They have found
They told you, like my dad's generation, you don't cry. They were told, you don't cry if you're a man. No.
But what's lacking with that is there is gray matter, which is brain matter, in the heart. They've just recently discovered it. And so,
and in the intestinal system too, like your intestinal tract is like your second brain too. And so a lot of how you feel emotionally, mentally is also how clean your food is. So with the diet in America being horrific, so many people aren't getting clear thinking, don't have their brain access because their inner tract is, there's all kinds of things going on this planet. We can't heal everything. We can heal our own stuff. Like, that's what I do when I'm up against someone's stuff who's not changed. Like, I'm going to go back to just working on me. Like, I'm doing my work. Even if nobody else is doing it, I'm going to do my work because I'm clear about what I'm supposed to be doing here. I'm supposed to be evolving and growing as a soul. And since I've found these fabulous tools that work to transform my life, I want other people to have them. These are free tools available to all. And my tool of chanting is just one of a myriad of tools that connect you with your higher self. Like, that's another thing where you trust your own intuition into the guidance of how you connect with your own higher self. Because some people just need to be out in nature, breathing deeply. Like, there's all kinds of beautiful spiritual modalities. It's the point is like turning your brain off and your emotional body off. Like, I use the image of like sliding my brain aside, sliding my emotional body aside so I can be a clear channel when I'm going to do a reading for something. So whatever's I'm thinking about personally, what I'm thinking about emotionally, and I just like channel, right? And it helps me to do that when I'm not channeling too. Like, oh, that's right, I'm up in my head, up in my emotional body, right? But if you keep things clear, it's easier to notice when you have a stinking thought that rises up. Right? Or an emotional trigger that comes out of nowhere. Because if you spend most of your time connected and conscious and feeling good and happy, like the higher life conditions, joy is an aspect of Buddhahood. Like, joy, real joy. Like, that's what was striking to me when I first chanted. Is I was in a room full of 20 people in someone's living room. These were all musicians because the people I knew were musicians. But so the sound of the harmonies of the voices was just beautiful. But I was hearing all these overtones and harmonics that were off the chain. I had goosebumps everywhere. And so I didn't even know what the words meant the first time I chanted, but they gave me a card with Nam Myoho Renge Kyo on it. And I just joined in. And in 10 minutes of chanting, I felt joy. Like, and I had just been 2 months in the hospital, no joy. My whole life, I hadn't felt that kind of joy. I'm like, ooh, they call this an expedient means where you could just go straight to Buddhahood. We talk about Buddhahood can bloom in the middle of the muddy swamp in our life. Renge means lotus flower, and the lotus flower produces its blossoms and its seeds at the same time. So it symbolizes that when we set the cause, the effect is already there. There may be a lag time before the manifestation of it. So if you're conscious right now of what the space you're holding, the more clear and intense you be right now, you're sending a very clear signal to the universe for the future. So the more clear you get, the more powerful you can become, right? It's just like you're removing static, when you do all the healing and removing you're getting quieter on the inside. You're removing the dis-ease so your body can just do what it's designed to do, which is like enjoy. I mean, I think our bodies were designed for us to enjoy. Why else would we have physical pleasure symptoms, right? So I was going to tell my story about male-female dynamics. So when Rafe, my youngest one, was 3 years old, we were having a play date with two other moms, one who had a little boy Rafe sage and one who had a little girl Rafe sage. So all 3-year-olds playing together. And all throughout the day, we hung out for about 3 hours. The little girl would just like burst into tears around something, and the boys were just, talking things through. And towards the end of their play, they had been playing out in the front yard and they came bursting in the door. And the little girl like made sure that everybody was watching her first, because we all turned to look at our kids as they're coming in the door, right? And she's like, like, but she hadn't been crying as she walked in the door. When she got in the door, it was like, and Rafe was standing there looking at her and patient and listening, because he's an evolved soul and was able to listen from birth. But he was sitting there listening, and when she got all out, she's like, He's like, are you done? She was like, he just wanted to play next. I'm like, oh my God, is that not classic male female dynamics? Like, are you done? Can we play now? You talking about those feelings? So anyway, I feel like we need to start wrapping up. We've been talking a lot. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, and we do. We talk over the phone for hours. So tell everybody again your website, how they can get in touch with you, what you're offering for a promotion for new clients that just have to mention this Psyched Up video to receive. So go ahead.
Yeah, if you want to read more, my website is healingfriend.net. You can email me at Paige, Paige, at healingfriend.net. Lots of information there. I have an Instagram if you're into Instagram, and that's where I go a little bit more into my like personal journey and what I'm dealing with generationally and in my personal life, and lots of inspiration and empowerment there. Lots of catharsis there, lots of conversation there, lots of support there. So if you mention this Psyched Up episode for our call, you get $25 off your first phone call. So I do obviously remote sessions, especially.
And what is your rates usually for a session?
Yeah, so usually a phone session is $75 for 45 minutes. Sometimes it can go a little bit over. Right. $75. So your first one will be $50. Okay. And then we can also just sort of like chat about what some of the chronic issues in life are, and we can develop like a game plan. Mm-hmm. And what I do is I just tap into your spirit. I call it screen sharing spirit, where I sort of bring yours in and I ask it questions.
To me, this is like where I would just call you a psychic as you're doing these, because the things you say and the things you're accessing sound and feel very similar to how I access information when I'm doing my psychic reading. So it's like, you're not calling yourself a psychic, but you are a psychic as well. Very, very, very intuitive. And so the messages, the stuff that you get through are very clear, very accurate information that's coming through you, dear.
They are. Thank you. And it's kind of that's kind of wild, because when I first started this work, it's like, okay, my healer was magical. When she said the alkaline thing, I was like, you can't pull that out of nowhere. But I find myself, I'll be doing a session with somebody, and then I'll be like, okay, there's this trauma from age 14, despair and loneliness. And they're like, oh, I don't remember that. Can you go into that for me? And I can psychically go into it. I don't like to do it for everyone because it takes a lot, like every single one, because I'm trying to clear a lot of shit.
Right. Yeah.
It can take forever, but I can. But I can also my physical body.
And you can do remote healing too. Like you can do healing for people when they're not even aware that you're doing it, correct? Do you have to ask permission for their higher self to do that for them?
Yes, I do. I have to ask permission. And sometimes they say no. And that's fine.
That's the same thing too. Like I'll be doing a reading for someone. We want to look at their relationship. And so we'll tap in and sometimes I'll get a no. And so I was like,
I'll physically get cues. Like I'll be like, hey, do you have trouble with your right knee? Because my right knee will just start hurting. And they'll be like,
I do the same thing.
And I'm like,
feeling in my body what's going on for them. Like all of a sudden I start getting like a slight headache here. And I go, like, do you get headaches? And I'm like, yeah. Or like my stomach will start hurting. And to me, it's like a mild symptom to what I sense that they're symptom, but it literally shows up in my body, which is the empathic thing, which is like, as children, what I see, like one of the work I felt called to do too is to help parents with sensitive children get in touch with abilities, because these little empaths that are on the planet are just feeling all this toxic stuff in their little tummies, are hurting all the time because they're just pulling into their emotional body everything that's going on and down in their environment, and they don't understand that they're a sponge is just soaking up things. Like what happens with a sponge that you never wring out? Like it gets slimy and stanky and gnarly, and that's what happens to empaths that don't find a way to wring themselves out in some way. To me, moving my body helps me wring out, and then all the spiritual tools that I've talked about. What's your favorite ways to access your higher self and wring out your empathic body?
I love music. I love sound. The ancient solfeggios you can find on YouTube, they all resonate at different frequencies, and they can help do different things. That helps me a lot. Meditation, I meditate every single morning for 25 minutes. And grounding is super important, because there are ions in the ground that balance us. We're supposed to be connected to the earth.
Right.
And so that's why you feel so dang good when you get out of the ocean or when you walk barefoot on like dewy grass, because that water conducts the natural electric current from the earth into our bodies, and our bodies physically need it.
Yeah,
And
there's something called like groundology where they talk about that in more depth. So if you're interested in Google groundology, which is where they're going into science of, yes, the literal things that are physically affecting us from planet Earth and walking around. That's the 5 o'clock bird going off. The 4 o'clock bird went off before, so we have definitely been talking for a while on my bird clock here. I'm first will be ever going, where's that coming from? I'm like, oh, that's just the 4 o'clock bird. That's the 5 o'clock bird. So thank you so much for spending time with me today here. My website's down right now. It's being revamped, so in the future it'll be a lot easier. But if you want to get in touch with me to get a psychic reading, past life regression, rebirthing, psychic development session, my email is bringoutthebuddha@gmail.com. And Buddha is spelled Buddha, and that's all the words, bring out the Buddha, strung together @gmail.com. So that's how you can get in touch with me to get a reading, find out my rates and all that. I can send you that information. I always do. I offer sliding scale for anybody that needs it. I'm also open to bartering with people. So if you think you might have something that you really need to read, I can guarantee you, if you really need a reading, we're going to figure out something that's going to work in an exchange of energy or services or something. I've bartered for everything under the sun. So if you can't afford a reading, but you'd like to get one, just contact me and tell me that, and we'll work something out. Okay. So, all right. Is there anything else you'd like to say in closing? Do you feel anything coming through for closure?
Thank you so much. While we're all still in America, at least isolated, make sure you're hugging yourself a lot, because physical touch is really important for healing. Try to get out in nature and ground, because those ions are good. All of that's going to help your immune system. It's going to help with depression. It's going to help with all those things. If you can't get a healing session or aren't sure about it, just do those things for yourself. It'll make all the difference, as well as organic food, as much produce as you can, especially leafy greens, really, really good for the brain.
Such a vital, just moving the body to get endorphins flowing and brain chemistry going, even if you're like, you don't have a space for it, because our bodies need that. And so many people stuck in their homes aren't getting enough movement right now. So I have a feeling when everything does open up back, like most of the people are going to be 50 and 100 pounds heavier, because a lot of people are emotionally eating right now. So you can keep watching my videos. I'm going to keep, I'm like, none of this has been a surprise for me. I've been getting these hits in advance, right before things are happening, all along. So if you're a client of mine, or if you want to be in my email list too, you can just send me an email and say, please put me on your email list. And I can do that as well. So yeah, I don't feel like there's anything else that's coming through. This has been so full of so many things. Hopefully people will watch it again and again and again, because we've just talked about some amazing, powerful things today, and I just so appreciate it. And yeah, so if you need to contact Paige, she's there for you. I'm here for you. Just do your best to raise your vibration and get out of the paradigm of like fear and worry. When you catch yourself like anxious and fear, like you're generating some thought that is creating the anxiety or the fear. So you can track out, what am I saying? There's not enough, there's not enough, there's not enough, or I'm not worthy, or what, like whatever it is, that's the inner work to kind of track down, pull that stuff out. And when you clear your stuff out, you get to have these beautiful lives with wonderful things that flow in, and beautiful people in your life that love you and support you, and work that you love to do. Like my life is like, I felt like I unknowingly created a raft built for this flood. Who knew? Like I was already doing readings over the phone before Corona hit. My youngest was already homeschooled his entire life. I homeschooled all 6 of my children. So 3.5 decades of homeschooling underneath my belt, you know, so, and you know, so I felt like, oh, okay, well, this is my time. I'm not looked at and shamed and judged as I was when I started doing this work 3.5 decades ago. People didn't look at you like you were normal. I mean, we're all psychic, and it shows up in various ways, and you can use your intuition in whatever you're doing with your own life, from the very, what do I feel guided to eat today? What do I feel guided to do with my time? Who do I feel like? we all can utilize our intuitions, because our intuition is our internal GPS system, the voice of the higher self. I call that my Buddha nature, Christ self, higher self, whatever God is, like the divine piece of you is there, alive, ready for access. It just takes conscious attention, because the world and the programming we've all received kind of puts us all asleep.
Yeah.
Not kind of, it does. It puts us all asleep. Okay,
Well,
I'm going to close with this. All right, I'm going to chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo 3 times. Would you join me with that, Paige? And let's just close this up, and y'all all have a blessed day. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Peace.